The wind howled like a wild animal. Snow fell hard from the black sky, covering the streets of the colony in white. Broken lights flickered on tall poles, giving off a cold, dying glow. The air was freezing. Even the machines had stopped moving. A small figure ran through the storm. She was not human. Her skin was a soft shade of blue, and her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. She wore a thin silver cloak, now soaked with melting snow. Her hands shook as she held the cloak tighter around her body. Her name was Sira. She had been running for hours. Her feet were numb, her legs hurt. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her people, the Zyari, had left the colony after the power failed. They boarded their ships and left. Without her. She was just a child. Only 14 cycles old. She didn't know why they abandoned her. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they thought she was already gone. Or maybe they just didn't care. Sira reached the first door and knocked. It was a metal door with glowing letters in a language she didn't understand. A small screen lit up, scanned her face, then shut off. The door stayed closed. She moved on. The second house was worse. A security drone flew down and pointed a light in her face. "This is a private zone," it said in a cold voice. "Leave immediately." "I need help," Sira whispered. "Please, I'm cold." "No life forms permitted," the drone said, and flew away. The third door opened, just a crack. A tall alien with yellow skin and black eyes looked out. His face twisted in anger. "A Zyari?" he hissed. "You people left us to die. Get away from my house." He slammed the door shut. Sira stood there, shivering. Her lips were turning blue. Even for a Zyari, her vision blurred. The snow was falling harder now. Her small boots were soaked through. She kept walking, street after street, door after door. Nobody wanted to help her. She tried to remember what her mother once said. Something about kindness. Something about trust. But her mother was gone now. Her voice was just a memory. She looked up at the night sky. Stars blinked in the distance. "Is anyone out there?" She whispered, but the stars didn't answer. Suddenly she fell to her knees. Her legs wouldn't move. Her breath came out in sharp, short gasps. The cold was winning. She curled up near a wall, trying to stay alive. Then she saw it, a small wooden house, standing at the end of the street. It was strange. Most colony homes were metal and glass. But this one looked old, like it came from Earth. Light glowed inside. Smoke rose gently from a chimney. Sarah's body screamed in pain as she stood up. Step by step, she moved toward the house. She reached the door and paused. What if they hated her too? What if it was another angry voice? Another drone? Another cold rejection? Her hand shook as she raised it. One soft knock. Then another. Nothing. She turned to leave, tears in her eyes. But then, the door opened. Warm yellow light spilled onto the snow. A tall figure stood in the doorway. A human. His face was tired but kind. His beard was frosted at the edges. He wore a thick brown coat and held a mug in one hand. He looked at her for a moment. "You look cold," he said softly. Sira couldn't speak. Her mouth was frozen. Her eyes filled with tears. The man stepped aside. "Come in," he said. She hesitated, then stepped into the warmth. As the door closed. Behind her, the storm outside kept screaming, but inside, it was quiet. Safe. Someone had opened their door. And that changed everything. The wooden door shut gently behind. Her snow melted off her shoulders onto the floor. The warmth hit her skin like a soft blanket. The house smelled like old wood and something sweet. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace at the end of the room. A simple table stood in the center with 2 chairs. One was empty, the other belonged to the human. Placed his mug on the table and reached for another. He poured hot liquid into it from a steel kettle, then handed the cup to the girl without asking questions. She took it with shaky hands. It warmed her fingers instantly. She brought it close to her lips and took a small sip. It burned a little but felt good. Her eyes watched him carefully. He sat down and spoke in a calm voice. "You were outside too long. You should rest here tonight." She looked at him with tired eyes. "You are human." Her voice cracked as she spoke. He nodded. "You are Ziari," he said. "I know your kind." She lowered her head. "We left this colony. I was not supposed to be here. They forgot me, or maybe they didn't care. I don't know anymore." The man didn't answer right away. He stood up and walked to a cabinet. He returned with a thick gray blanket. He placed it on her shoulders without saying a word. She blinked. Her people always said humans were dangerous, that they were wild, too emotional, too violent, not to be trusted, but this man made her feel safe. She asked softly, "Why did you open your?" "No one else did." He looked into the fire for a moment, then spoke slowly. "Because you knocked, and because you looked like a child, not an enemy." She stared at the fire. Its orange glow danced in her silver eyes. She felt her body relax for the first time in days. "What's your name?" she asked. "Eli," he replied. "I'm Sira." They sat in silence. The fire cracked. The snow hit the windows outside, but inside there was peace. Eli stood again and grabbed a metal pot from a shelf. He poured some powder into it and added water, then placed it above the fire. The smell of soup filled the room. Sira closed her eyes. She was tired, more tired than she had ever been. "You can sleep on the couch," Eli said. "There's food coming then. You rest. No one will hurt you here." Sira didn't reply. Her head rested on the edge of the couch. The heat wrapped around her like a cocoon. The light flickered gently, but outside in the shadows beyond the trees, a small blinking red light watched. The house, a surveillance drone, hovered in silence. It had no emotions, no warmth, only orders inside. Sira finally slept. Outside, someone had learned she was still alive. The morning arrived without sound, no alarm, no sirens, just the golden light of a week. Sun slipping through wooden blinds. Sira opened her eyes slowly. The blanket still wrapped around her like a soft shell. The fire was now quiet, ash glowing in soft orange under black. Woodile was already awake. He stood near the window holding a strange device that made a soft humming sound. He looked outside for a long time without moving. Sira sat up, her throat dry, her voice low. "Did something happen?" Eli turned his head slightly. "Not yet, but something was here last night. I saw tracks in the snow, too clean to be natural, too straight to be animal." Sira pulled the blanket closer. She knew what it was, a tracking drone. Ziari tech, silent, cold, perfect at finding what others want to forget. She whispered quietly, "They know I'm still alive. They always find the ones who are left behind." Eli didn't answer. He walked to the table and picked up 2 bowls, poured warm soup into both. The smell made Sira's stomach growl as they ate. She looked at the fire again, its glow reflected in her eyes like stars floating in dark water. "My people left because of the war. The machines rebelled, the other colonies collapsed. Everyone was scared. The leaders said we must go back to the core worlds, far from humans, far from this place." She stirred her soup without lifting the spoon. "My mother tried to hide me in a transport. She told me to stay quiet, to stay still." She kissed my head. "Then she ran into the smoke. I waited too long. When I came out, the ship was gone." Eli's spoon stopped moving. He stared at the table without blinking. "I fought in that war, not proud of it, but I did what I had to do." Sira looked up slowly. "You were a soldier. I was a human," he said. "War turns us into other things, but only if we let it." He stood and opened a box on a shelf. Inside was a metal badge, old, scratched, still shining under the light. He placed it on the table. Sira reached out and touched it gently. It was heavier than it looked. "We were told humans fight first, talk later, that you burn bridges before you build them." Eli smiled without smiling. "Sometimes, but we also rebuild faster than most. We care deeply. That's why we hurt deeply, and that's why I opened my door." Sira looked away outside. Snow had begun falling again. The wind returned, soft but growing. A sound came from the back of the house, low, electronic. Eli moved instantly. He grabbed the small device from earlier and pressed a button. A screen lit up. A red pulse blinked on the edge of the map, drone signature, moving toward us same as last night. Sierra stood frozen. What do we do? Eli walked to a cabinet and opened it with a key. Inside was a rifle, old design, Earth-made, still deadly. We get ready, and if it comes through that door, it won't leave the same. Sierra's heart raced, not from fear, from something else. From the strange feeling of being defended, being worth fighting for outside in the silent snow. The red light moved closer inside. The fire burned. Again, brighter this time, not just from wood, but from purpose. Snow kept falling, but the air was no longer quiet. The hum of something unnatural moved between the trees. It came closer with steady rhythm. Not rushed, not slow, just certain. Eli stood beside the front window, rifle in hand, eyes fixed, breath controlled. Sarah stayed low near the wall, wrapped in the gray blanket. Her heart beat faster than before, her mind full of questions with no answers. The sound stopped. A cold silence followed. No wind, no birds, no creak of wood. A knock came. 3 short hits on the door, hard, mechanical, precise. Eli raised the rifle but did not fire. He spoke clearly, without fear. Who is it? No answer, only a pause. Then a voice came through the door. This is Unit 5 of Colonial Patrol. We are searching for unauthorized biosignatures. Open for inspection. Eli looked at Sierra. She shook her head. She knew the voice. Not human, it was synthetic. Part organic, part machine, made for tracking, made for control. Eli turned back toward the door, his voice steady. This is private property. You are not welcome here. Leave. The voice replied with no change in tone. You are harboring a Ziari. That is a violation under Treaty Protocol 9. Open or face forceful entry. Eli stepped closer to the door. He placed one hand on the wood. The other held the rifle tight. No one enters this house without invitation. That's not a threat. That's a promise. A longer pause. Then the sound of retreating footsteps. No blast, no crash, just retreat. Eli waited for 1 full minute. Then another, then lowered the rifle. They'll be back, he said. They don't give up, not unless they find something more interesting. Sierra stood up slowly. She wanted to ask why he risked himself, why he didn't turn her in, why he spoke like an old soldier who still had hope. But before she could speak, Eli walked toward the back room. He opened a wooden chest covered in dust. Inside were maps, old photos, a torn jacket with a name patch, and something else. A black keycard marked with a red phoenix. Sierra stepped closer. What is that? Eli looked at her with quiet fire in his eyes. A place no one remembers, but one we built for storms like this. Shelter. 9 last outpost of Earthborn resistance, forgotten by the colonies, but not by me. He unfolded the map, traced a line with his finger through mountains and ruins. Leave tonight, before they circle back, before they bring more. Sierra stared at the map. The route looked long, dangerous, but not impossible. Why are you helping me? Because you knocked, because you didn't beg, because you're more than what they say you are, and because we're not so different. You and I. Sierra didn't speak. She didn't need to. Trust was already forming, quiet, unspoken, real. Outside snow kept falling, but now it hid something beneath it. Tracks, footprints, not one pair, 3, and none of them belonged to Eli or Sierra. The drone had not come alone. The fire had burned down to black ash. Only faint heat remained. Eli packed what he could carry. Food, water, old maps, 1 loaded rifle, 1 spare battery. Sierra stood by the door, boots too big, jacket too loose, eyes watching every shadow. No words were spoken, no goodbyes to the house. Only one glance back before stepping into the snow. The forest waited like a frozen maze, tall trees, branches heavy with ice, ground covered in silence. Ellie moved first, 1 hand on the rifle, 1 eye on the sky. Sierra followed, each step slower than the last. Her breath rose like smoke, her legs burned, but she did not stop. They crossed the river before the sun rose. Half-frozen water pulled at their boots. Eli lifted her across the deeper patch. No complaints, no lecture. Only 1 hand held out without hesitation on the other side. Ruins began to appear, old human shelters. Metal buried in roots, signs faded by time, walls covered in moss. Sierra paused by 1 broken gate. Her fingers touched the rusted steel. What was this place, Outpost 7? Ailey said we built it during the first wave, when Earth still believed we could live with the stars. Did we tried. Then we fought. Then we left behind places like this, but some of us remember. They kept walking, wind cutting across their faces. No sound but snow and breath. Ahead stood a structure half buried in the hill. A door wide open. Inside a figure waited, human female, older, wearing armor marked with red stripes. Seeley stopped. Lowered his rifle, nodded once. Irene, took you long enough, she said, her voice sharp. Her eyes sharper. You still shoot straight. When I need to. She glanced at Sierra, frowned. You brought one of them. Her name is Sierra. You brought her here. She's just a kid. She's not ours, Eli. You know what they did. What they left behind. You remember Haven Sector. I lost my sister there. Sierra stepped back. The words felt heavier than bullets. I didn't do anything, she whispered. Irene didn't answer. Her hand moved to her sidearm. Eli stepped between them. You pull that trigger. You lose more than just another piece of the past. She stared at him long, hard. Then turned around and walked into the shelter. You both have 5 minutes. After that I decide. Inside. The room was warm, but tense. Dust floated in the air. Old tech blinked on rusted tables. Sarah sat on a bench, hands in her lap, heart pounding. Eli leaned close. I trusted her once. She saved my life back in the breach. But time changes people. What if she tells them I'm here? Then we run again together. Irene returned with a datapad. She dropped it on the table. 3 search signals, all within 20 clicks. They're closing in. You set a trap. Eli said I warned them. I told them we'd never be safe again. But you walked in here with a target. Sierra stood. Then I'll go. I won't bring danger. Here. Eli grabbed her arm gently. No. They'll catch you in the open. We finish what we started. Irene opened a hidden door in the wall. Inside were weapons, armor, signal jammers. Pick what you can carry, she said. If you slow us down, you stay behind. Sarah nodded once. No fear, only resolve. Trust is not given, but she would earn it outside. The snow had stopped above the trees. 3 dark shapes moved through the clouds. The hunt had begun. The wind had stopped, but tension had not. Inside the shelter, 3 people stood surrounded by steel walls and fading memories. Irene checked her rifle with practiced hands, movements, sharp eyes colder than snow. Sarah adjusted the chest plate. Eli gave her too big, too heavy, but she wore it like she meant it. Eli loaded the last magazine, his hands steady, his thoughts elsewhere. He looked at Irene. They will come here. You know it. You called them. Now we fight on their terms. Irene didn't blink. We fight on any terms we're given. That's what survivors do. Sierra stepped forward. I'm not a soldier, but I'm tired of running. Irene turned toward her. You were never supposed to be here. This isn't your fight. Then why am I the one they're chasing? Why did I survive while others didn't? Maybe I was meant to be here. Maybe you were meant to hear me. Her voice cut through the silence like fire through frost. I didn't drop bombs. I didn't start wars. I was a child in a crowd that no one looked at. And still, I kept knocking. The room was quiet again, not from lack of words, but from the weight of truth. Eli placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. He spoke with a voice worn by war, but shaped by hope. She reminded me what being human means. Not just blood, not just origin, but choice. Irene looked away. Her eyes traced the cracks in the concrete, as if answers could grow from them. Then the alarm lit up. Red flashes. Screaming silence broken by blinking light. They are here. Eli turned to Sierra. You stay behind me. No matter what. Irene moved toward the door, stopped, then turned. One chance. You step outside. You speak for yourself. They shoot. We shoot back. Sierra nodded. Not as a refugee, not as a child, but as someone finally ready to be heard. The steel door opened. Cold air rushed in. Floodlights burned from the sky. Figures stood beyond the trees, weapons raised, voices shouting commands. Sarah stepped forward alone, her hands open, her voice calm. You came for fear, but you will leave with a story, not of enemies, not of weapons, but of one human who opened a door. No shot came, no voice replied, only stillness. Then a command was given. Hold fire. A tall figure in black armor stepped forward, their face hidden, their voice distant. You are the Ziari girl, the last one. I am Sierra. I am not last. I am not lost, I am here because I was seen, and I will not hide behind her. Eli stood with his rifle lowered. Irene at his side, ready but waiting. The armored figure raised one hand, signaled the others to stand down. We will take her. Alive, we have questions. Eli moved beside Sierra. You want answers? Then you listen. You treat her like a person, or you'll face the reason humanity survived the stars. The tension cracked not with a bullet, but with a choice. The figures lowered their weapons. No retreat, no surrender, only silence inside the shelter. Old tech continued to hum outside. A new future waited for its first step. No one fired, no one moved. The snow had settled, the war had paused. Sierra stood tall in front of those who once hunted her. No chains, no collar, only choice. Eli stood beside her, not as a shield, but as witness. Irene watched from the edge, fingers still near the trigger, but her heart not as hard as before. The commander lowered their helmet, eyes sharp, voice without emotion. Why did you run? Why did you return? Why did you not hide? Sierra's answer came like breath in the cold. Because I believed someone would listen. Because I believed kindness still existed. Because one human opened a door when everyone else closed theirs. The wind carried her voice farther than she expected. Some soldiers looked down. Some looked away. One lowered his weapon fully. We are trained to follow code, to follow reason. You offer neither. I offer proof. I am standing here. You came to erase, but you found life. Commander stayed silent, not from weakness but from thought. Behind him a second voice came clear, older female. She is right. A woman stepped forward from a second transport, civilian clothes, government tag on her shoulder. We watched from orbit. We heard the recordings. That girl is the reason this war has one last chance to stop. The soldiers turned. The moment shifted. Eli placed a hand over Sarah's shoulder. You did this, not by fighting, but by surviving, by speaking. Irene stepped out of the shadows, her rifle still slung but untouched. So, what now? She asked the group. Do we let her walk, or do we walk with her? No order was given. No flag was raised, only quiet heads nodding in agreement. The girl who went door to door, who found only silence, had become the one voice others could not ignore. Later, a council was formed, one human, one Ziari, and one from every voice caught. In between, Eli returned to the old wooden house, rebuilt the fire, left the door unlocked. Sierra never went back to hiding. She stood before crowds, spoke to leaders, wrote in 2 languages. Her first message was short. They printed it on every wall in the colony. Warmth is not built with metal. It begins with an open door.